everyone, and welcome to New Trials, the podcast. I'm Priya.
And I'm Melanie.
The New Trials of Cardcaptor Sakura, Sharon, and Friends is a popular ongoing fanfic by Wishlove that was created back in 1999, and it's based off of Clamp's Cardcaptor Sakura. Now let's get into the podcast.
So, the first thing I wanted to bring up today is actually a correction from our last episode. So, you know how when we were talking about Wish Chan's age,
Yes.
and you were like, I did the math and I think she's 12.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we talked about that, that was kind of ringing a bell in my head, and I couldn't figure out why. But then a couple days ago, it finally deemed in. So, here in America and Canada, and I don't know where else, like when a baby is born, we go weeks, 1 month, 2 month, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So when babies are born in Korea, where Wish Chan is from, they're 1 right away.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why she calls herself 13, because that's how they do it in Korea.
What do you know?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Huh.
Yeah. And I feel like the only reason I know that is because I'm a big fan of K-pop and Korean dramas. And I feel like I've looked up the age of some of my favorite actors and stuff. And I was reading about that. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, correction.
Oh, wow. I would have never thought of that. That's super cool. Huh. Okay, well, now that everything's in line, let's get into the summary for chapter one.
All right.
Okay, so chapter one, The New Beginning. 2 years later marks the 8th grade for Sakura and her friends, who are now 14-year-olds. In Hong Kong, Sharon is the star athlete and superb artist known for his portrait of an anonymous green-eyed beauty, and he's the object of affection of every girl. Meanwhile, in Japan, things are slow until the day where 2 new students join the class, twins named Aaron and Erica Chang. The twins take notice of Sakura, and she is both aware and uneasy. Sharon senses a new threat and immediately sets off for Japan in the middle of the night. However, he makes a decision to keep his feelings guarded from Sakura to prevent him from appearing as a fool. As he is settling down in his old apartment, Sakura is encountering a foreign enemy in the form of slicing blades. Sharon comes in time for the battle, and the blades, and Sakura creates a new spell to contain the spirit. The knife recognizes Sharon as master of the cards, but he gives it to Sakura. Aaron and Erica observe this scene, and we learn that there is still more powerful spirits yet to come. So just to give an idea of stats, so they're in the 8th grade. It's September. This chapter was released in September 1999, and the word count is actually 5,654 words. So let's get into it.
So the first thing I wanted to bring up is how absolutely romantic would it be for someone to draw a painting that's portraying beauty and they paint you?
That is so flattering. You know what I find interesting about this scene is that he actually paints a girl with long hair, and he's never known Sakura to have long hair because he's always known her short hair. But he's just so self-conscious. It's like, you know what? Let me just take the wheel and let me just show what your heart desires. And he's like, nope, nope, nope. I'm not recognizing any of it.
I also think it's pretty apparent at this point because, as we move further along into the fan fiction, we learn that, not only did he keep his feelings guarded because he didn't want to look like a fool, but he also felt like he was protecting her in a way too, by kind of acting cold and aloof and all of that. But I think it's so apparent, even in this first chapter, that the boy is still so very much in love with her.
Oh yeah, he even remembers. It's like, oh, I bet she still has a thing for Yukito, and that bit of jealousy, it's still there in the back burner. But you know how Sharon, rough, tough, hard exterior. It broke my heart, the scene where it's like she sees him for the first time and she clings to him and she's so happy to see him, and it's like, oh come on, we have to be professional, and it kind of brushes her off, and we know there's more heartache to come, but we're not there yet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But I remember that like Wishchan was really clever to take this approach because like me as an author, I'm like, let's make SNS a couple and so fluffy and mushy and romantic and that really let's just say that ran out of steam very quickly. So Wish Chan, she was smart enough to like, okay, bring in the conflict because it's the conflict that drives the story.
Yes. Well, and like, for instance, the clear card stuff they're doing now, they kind of bring Sharon and Sakura not as a couple, but sort of like they go on dates and all of that. And even though I loved clear card, I couldn't help but being almost kind of bored with their relationship. I kind of missed, like, I felt like he was so robotic in clear card and I missed him like being all like where he would get like or he'd get super embarrassed or super jealous or I just felt like his character just became so bland and he's my favorite character by far out of everyone.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, and so I was really we talked about this last chapter what we look for when it can't comes to fan fiction and I just loved the fact that this is not only a sequel, but it kind of just resets their relationship. But it makes sense that their relationship is reset too. She doesn't do it just for story's sake. Like there's actual,
Oh yeah,
me.
it's been 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, which I think anybody would grow distant from someone in 2 years if not talking to them. I think that's especially kids. I mean, 14, like, do you even remember, who you were sort of friends with or sort of had a crush with around that time? So it makes sense in that regard too.
Yeah, because 12 and 14 are complete different ages. And it's interesting how, like, we're talking about 2 years now. Because when Wish Chen first started writing this story, she actually wrote 1 year later, and she wrote seventh grade. So the version on fanfiction.net that actually has the pre-corrections. But if you go on her Wish Love site, it's going to say 2 years later, and it's like, oh, we welcome Erica and Aaron to the eighth grade class. So, just Wish Chan doing some tinkering as we go along. But no, for sure, like 12 years old and 14 years old, it seems it's like it's such a far apart because you grow so much, you change so much. Your views are yes, you're young, but like let's face it, 12 and 14 not the same as like when you go from 35 to 37.
And I have to apologize to everyone because for those of you that may not know, I narrate the audiobook on the side. And when I narrate the audiobook, I've just been reading off of fan fiction. So I didn't realize it until I pulled up her geo site today. I was like, oh no. So I apologize. I think I read the wrong age because I remember while I was reading it, I was like, man, her hair grew really fast in such a short amount of time. But it makes sense now.
So we have the introduction of Aaron and Erica, which I'll call them Aaron and Erica because I know in your audiobook you pronounce the names as if a Japanese would pronounce the names. I think that's really interesting, but I'll say Aaron and Erica on my side.
That's fair.
So what do you think of the twins?
So I think they're very much like when they're first introduced, they're very much the villainous. They're very like, we'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. Kansas reference, because that's where I'm from. And I think, they're very much introduced to villains, but what I love about Wish Chan is talk about character development as we go on with these two. It's just insane.
Oh, I know they go so far. It's like whoever thought that like Aaron of all people would be the light twin.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I also think it's super interesting because I feel like it's a very normal way of thinking of I'm going to introduce another villain and he's going to be a boy. But I just think it's so interesting that it's twins. So we also get a female perspective of a villain too, which I think is just fascinating with Erika.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about her character growth, and I'm just so excited to get because like right now they seem kind of two-dimensional. It's like, oh, when is our power going to like be like powerful enough that we're going to get them? And it's like they have so many things ahead of them. But yeah, they definitely go on adventures and transformations that they themselves didn't even see coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm. Um, there was one part of this chapter that made me laugh so much, and it was Sharon's mom reading the letter and her commentary and her little like jabs. What we talked about last week about how like the fanfic authors of the 90s and early 2000s, they would interject like their own author's notes, and that's what it made me think of.
That was very hard to narrate from the audiobook perspective.
I don't think Wish Chan really had a hold of who Yelan or Yelan was. I still can't picture her acting that, like having those comments, but who am I to know? I never had a kid just run off in the middle of the night with my credit card.
It's, talk about brave to steal your mom's credit card. Like he's very brave.
And not only did he steal her credit card, but he had the gall to say, "Mother, can you please transfer more funds into my bank account?"
So one thing I wanted to bring up, and I have kind of my own personal headcanon about it, but I want to hear what you think. So did the Lee clan just hold on to this apartment in Japan for all this time?
Well, you know what they say about like you know what? I would say yes, because that's the problem with condos now. Because I think in China, you can't really hold property. It all belongs to the government or something like that. I don't know the ins and outs, but I heard a lot of Chinese investors, they're investing in Toronto or they're investing in big cities, and that's where they can like keep their money and like out of the hands of the government. So it's like, honestly, this Wish Chan probably didn't know it, but this is par for the course.
Yeah, especially with how the real estate market is nowadays. I don't know about when she wrote this, but
Oh, she wasn't thinking about real estate, but yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to my old apartment. It's waiting for me. I just know it. It'll be a bit dusty. I'll clean. It'll be all right, and I'm sure Wei will come too. Thumbs up.
Mhm.
But yeah,
So
I think it's normal for like, and I'm sure that apartment's not their only property. They must have like they are the Lee clan after all.
yeah. Well, we find out later there's the Lee Mansion that's in Itoko.
Hmm.
And but my personal headcanon about this whole apartment thing is I think in Sharon's heart of heart, he knew he was going to go back to Japan eventually. I think no matter what, whether or not it was the dark forces that he kind of foresaw coming, or even just like he knew he would return to Sakura like one way or another. So my own personal feelings is that he's been paying for this apartment on his own for these 2 years. Because I mean, the Lee clan, with how powerful and how much money they are they really going to notice a couple $100 just, disappearing out of the bank account every month? Like to them, that's probably chump change. And so, and I think he just has, so I think in my head canon, he's just been paying for this apartment on his own because he knew he would go back there someday, somehow.
Oh, that's very romantic. Okay, I co-sign that headcanon. I'm totally on board. You've got me on that train.
So this is kind of a funny, but this nice dark force, for some reason, I have the hardest time picturing it in my head. And how I picture it, and it's so silly, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but like to me, it's like one knife of an arm, one knife of an arm, and then for some reason, I picture a butter knife as the head.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. That's funny. That's funny. The thing is though, I didn't even have to imagine it because Digi Dynasty, she's the one who used to upload the chapters on fanfiction.net. She actually drew a lot of fan art and she drew the knife and I'm just gonna explain it. So basically it's a spirit and who looks like Edward Scissorhands-ish, knife for knives for hands. I'm gonna put the link in the description. But no butter knife head.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this Dark Force ever gets brought up again. I don't
Oh
think she.
no. No, no, no. That's one thing that's like for all the world building and for all of the everything that happens, these old cards, they don't really come back and make an appearance. I feel that with Shen, she spends more time focusing on plot points and like character relationships and less time. And it's like, oh, I wonder how I can bring this card back. I wonder how I can bring that card back. But even like if you think of Cardcaptor Sakura with Clamp, it's like when Ariel had Sakura changing all of the cards, there was just one episode in the anime where she was just like doing a mass changing because they're like, how are we going to incorporate this in a storyline?
Yeah, like the Libra and some of those kinds.
I've never heard of the Libra before. I don't even know where it came from. And if it wasn't for Wish Chen using it in New Trials, I wouldn't even realize that it was used to tell the truth.
hmm Yeah, I think it was one of those throwaway episodes in CCS, if I remember correctly, that not everyone remembers. I don't remember what the episode was about, actually, now that I go to say it.
No, I think well, I don't recall any episode of the Libra. I think it's just that Clamp had an idea of, okay, we're gonna have so many cards, but we just don't have enough episodes. And who knows, who knows. But I think at the end of the day, there are cards and there are really good capture scenes, but there's no like incorporating a whole row of cards to do the capture. Usually it's just like one or two and a lot of teamwork.
Yeah. Well, and also maybe just coming from a tarot card perspective, because, Sakura can use her cloud cards as like a tarot deck, sort of. And I think in traditional tarot, Libra is associated with the judgment card, so it's like a way of like balancing scales, like balancing good and balancing evil. And it's usually a card of meaning you're going to face some type of like court proceeding or some type of judgment within yourself. So it might have been a way to, I don't know, I might be overthinking it, but it might be a way for like when Sakura goes to read her cards, it kind of can help point her in a direction of making a right or informed decision too.
Hmm. Yeah. So all that to say, the knife, this is the first and last appearance. Um, we're gonna have some like weird cards in the future. Like I remember that Erica and Aaron, they use like a transportation card, and then we never hear about that again.
Oh shoot, I forgot all about that.
I think it was still Arc One. I think like Wish Chan was still working things out. I think I saw a review that said New Trials is a story that really starts to take its stride in Arc Two.
I can see that, but kind of like what we talked about last chapter. I'm also very super partial to the New York stuff too. Like to
Yes.
me, that's where it takes off personally for me. But I also have a love affair with New York though. So
And I think like the camping trip itself, that too, that sets it's a pretty well. I think Wish Chen she was really starting to grab the characters and seeing where everybody's going during the camping arc. I think she realized that the longer things are more her is where she excels.
hmm And I mean, and we'll get there once we get to that chapter, but it has the famous sunrise quote that is very prevalent throughout the rest of the whole fan fiction. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So Sakura and Sharon's what's it how would you say it? They reunite and it's not what us fans want.
Yeah.
It makes me sad, but at the same time, this is exactly the kind of conflict that New Trials needs in order to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we all wanted him to just break down and be like, just kidding. I'm actually still very much in love with you. And then Sakura would magically go, well, I love you too, actually. And then New Trials would only be 3 chapters.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, look at this. I just love the fact that when Wish-chan wrote Sharon coming back to Japan, this was before Clamp themselves had Sharon leave for China and come back to Japan. And they had the like the ending that we were looking for, running into each other's arms, exchanging teddy bears, and it's like we're gonna be together forever? Yes, we will. The end.
Oh, so sweet. But again, we wouldn't have our new trials, and I mean it's called new trials, and
Oh
half
yeah.
them freaking confessing to each other.
And this is New Trials. It's like I think it's interesting how like Sharon, I mean sorry, Sakura is just living in a world where it's like there's no danger. She's not even walking with the cards anymore. She only has a necklace around her neck. Yukito doesn't even transform into Yue anymore. So things have really reverted to the way they were.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good point.
But now it's time for the new trials, and now it's time for a new adventure.
Do you have any other questions or discussions you would want to bring up?
No, I think we pretty much covered what we need to about this chapter. I'm still only thinking about Sharon low-key paying for the apartment so that he'll come back to it. That's so sweet.
I'm glad you're in my head canon now with me. I'm not alone.
So I think now it's we can move on to Wish Chan's author's notes.
Okay. So on the Geosite one, by the way, because it has the two, it has the one she's edited. So the first part says she's still calling herself author. It says author, fall of 1999. As the CCS crew says, it's just the beginning. Take note that Sakura, Tomeo, Shadon, and everyone are in 7th grade. Then there's like a parentheses that says, edited this part to 2nd year junior high. More characters will enter in the next chapter. Does this dream make sense? Well, they are prophetic. Oh yeah, how can anyone's hair grow so fast in such a short amount of time? Technically, it works out, since if Sakura grew her hair since the end of 5th grade, it'll be 2 years later. And hey, in stories, anything is possible. Still not clear in who Eran and Erika are? Wait and see. Things about the past will start unraveling. And then there's another one that says Wish Chan, August 2012. Chapter 1, The New Beginning version 2.0 here. I have been tempted to really edit and rewrite the whole prologue in chapter 1, but I thought it would be more fun just to leave it as it is to see how the writing style in New Trials progresses and changes. Thus, I have stuck to minimal editing and consistencies check. Maybe there will be a version 3.0 someday. I would love to go into my 13-year-old self and tell her, hey, you're going to be stuck with this fanfic for the next decade. Choose a cooler title, cooler nom de plume, and be more organized and create multiple backup files. And then she throws out our Yahoo group, and then her DeviantArt, her blog. Finally, the latest chapters can be found in the New Home Trials of the Geosite link. And then happy 13th anniversary of New Trials of Cardcaptor Sakura. Thank you for supporting the fan fiction for so long.
Wow, and now New Trials is in its 23rd year.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. We talked about that last time, but that's just insane.
Oh, so we didn't mention that, well, we didn't talk about how, like, in the prologue, Sakura dreamt about Sharon falling off the cliff. But in this chapter, Sharon dreams about Sakura falling off the cliff. So I think it's cool that they had the same kind of dream, even though they would never know it.
Right. And I still kind of wonder, you know, was that Risa, the dark one, like kind of imprinting like what happened to her onto them already? Or is that something that might happen that's leading up to everything? You know, like I kind of wonder how it's going to play in because this is, you know, the whole cliff scene, it's very prevalent, especially in arc 1. And I feel like it gets mentioned a couple times later on too. Like I think there's a scene, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I think, you know, there's a scene of Nadesco and Ridoran too, with the whole cliff and all that. And he, so I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out. Like if it happens or if that was just Risa being like, hey, look, this is why there's this whole curse because my brother's crazy and all that.
Oh my gosh, as you mentioned this, I completely forgot about Risa's death, and it's all coming back to me. And not only that, but in the beginning of Arc 4, when they go on the camping trip and Sakura is attacked by the Veil and she's blind, she's also dangling from a cliff.
And it's the same cliff that Risa died at. It's the same Kumatori Mountain and all that is where everything happened. And
Wow.
I know we're jumping super far ahead, but in that chapter, I think they mentioned that's the first time all the descendants of the Great Five have been present on that mountain again in like hundreds of years or something like that.
Yes, I remember. But yeah, I never ever have connected the Dream Cliff scene to Risa's death. And now that you mention it, that could be Risa just like putting it out there. It's like, look, this happened to me, and it's like I'm so angry that I want it to happen to you. Wow.
Or it could be Ryuji too, because he could be like, in order to make up for my sister's death, one of your descendants, Lee or Amamiya, like one of you have to perish and you have to perish the same way my sister did. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how or if it gets brought up again.
Oh, the thing is, though, it's been so long. I don't think it's going to be brought up again.
I, oh, well, I'll never put anything past Wish Chan at this point.
Okay. Well, there's one fan art that I absolutely love, that's based on this chapter. So Digi Dynasty, I mentioned her before. She actually also drew a fan art of the cliff scene. But the one that I want to highlight is a really, really nice digital art piece that she did of Sakura, drawn by Sharon. And it's so pretty with the cherry blossoms floating and Sakura's green eyes looking and her long hair. We're going to link that in the description too. Definitely deserves a shout out.
Yeah, I feel like she captured that like beautiful, wistful smile very well too.
Really nice.
Is she still active in the group, Digi?
Um, See, she kind of like jumped ship a little bit after because she would be the one to upload. So back in the day, she uploaded Wish Chan's chapters on fanfiction.net. She was actually the one who created the account. It wasn't even Wish Chan who created it. It was Digi Dynasty who created the account and under Wish Chan's name, and then she started uploading the chapters. And then when I first discovered the fic, it was only up to chapter so and so. And then I found chapters like, let's say 34, 35, 36, whatever, on her actual site. And that's what prompted me to email her and it's like, hey, nobody's uploading it to the site anymore. Can I do it? And that was just the beginning of a beautiful collaborative relationship where I am like her number one hype woman and taking on all of these projects. And then Digi Dynasty did reach out to me and say, "Hey, thanks for continuing this. I've got a couple of poems. Can you share it on the account?" And I posted that, and that was the last I heard from her.
Ah, girl, if you're still active, comment. We want to know. We want to hear from you. She mentions how it's fun to see how her writing style progresses, which we kind of talked about that last chapter too. But like it's so, and I'm sure it was very interesting for her, especially at her caliber in 2012, to go back and read these chapters and be like, I really hope Wish Chan that you patted yourself on the back because your writing is absolutely fantastic, and I hope like I know even though you're kind of giving yourself a hard time about these first couple chapters, but like we talked about in our first episode, you can kind of tell that you're just going to be an amazing author just even from these couple chapters. And then you only get, even more amazing as we go along.
Yes, Wish Chan, you're amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Priya's your number one and I'm your number two fangirl.
Oh, I think we're all number one in her hearts.
All right. Well, anything else we want to mention or talk about?
I think we've covered it for this week.
So you've been listening to New Trials, the podcast. Please be sure to check out the audiobook version, which is narrated by Melanie, which will be released simultaneously with the podcast chapters. Also, please feel free to check out the fan fiction by Wish-Chan, which you can find on fanfiction.net, as well as her Geosite link. Do you have any questions or comments for us? Please feel free to email us at ntthepod@gmail.com. Or feel free to leave us a comment on the Facebook New Trials page. Do you have a chapter-specific related question? Please be sure to email us at ntthepod@gmail.com. If it is a chapter-related specific question, please make sure you get your question to us as soon as possible so we can make sure we answer your question on time.
This has been New Trials, the podcast, where it must rain for there to be a rainbow.